Good morning and welcome to Blue Smoke and Black Ink, the podcast where you can blow off a cheap cigar, or if you'd rather, just sit back and enjoy a 30-minute sit down with some of America's greatest writers. Let me take you back to the year 1997. My family's living in an old farmhouse in northern Vermont. I'm setting the table, getting ready for dinner, and Oprah's on the kitchen TV behind me. Now you have to remember, this is when Oprah was the only game in town. The Book of the Month Club had kind of faded away. There weren't 1,000 pseudo intellectuals trying to do book clubs. Oprah was the one, and she holds up this book. Okay.
Actually, Jim, I'm going to correct you.
Oh no, we're only a minute in, and Chris is correcting me already.
How are you?
Go ahead,
First of all,
Chris.
my friend, how the hell are you?
Oh, great to see you. What
You're
were you going to say? I'm trying to get us to a gallery look. There we are. What were you going to say? You didn't write
okay.
this book?
Oprah never held that book up.
Oh,
She held up
really?
the paperback, and it was October of 1998. It was 18 months after that hardcover you're holding was
Oh,
published. I do love
okay.
that cover you're holding. For those of you who are watching this and not listening to this, that is an infrared, black and white photograph my wife took of our bedroom in Lincoln, Vermont, where we lived at the time. And that is our infant daughter's babysitter serving as the model. But the book that Oprah held up 18 months later was the blue paperback that is now iconic.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of information. We're going to talk about your beautiful wife and that little girl of yours who's now a grown woman and an actress. But let me ask you a personal question. Did the hardcover sell well before Oprah went to the paperback and made it a selection?
Yes, it sold very well. I was thrilled. And in fact, it would even be a New York Times bestseller before Oprah picked it. Now, when she picked it, it went right to number one. And
Yeah.
it spent months at number one, unlike the first time it was a bestseller when it sort of clung by its fingernails desperately for a week or two to the list.
Oh, wow. We have a few of your earlier copies, but see, my time frame was wrong. I thought, oh, maybe this was your second or third novel, and you were a struggling, 5,000 sales novel until Oprah ushered you along. But that's not true.
No, no, but you're not alone in thinking that, Jim. Here's okay. So this is I love this part of the origins story.
Yep.
Midwives was my fifth novel.
Okay.
When Oprah held it up, it instantly went to number one at Amazon.com, which back in 1998 everyone looked at right away to see where your book's ranking, what your book's ranking was, and one of the reporters who called me up, and it might have been the AP reporter, I'm not sure, but she wanted to talk very, very much about this being a rags to riches story. But it wasn't. There had been a time in my life 5 years earlier when my lovely bride and I really were struggling financially.
Yep.
One month in 1994, we sold all of the dining room furniture to pay the mortgage. One
Wow.
month we sold all of the living room furniture so we could have another month of health insurance. But by the time Oprah picked Midwives, I already had a movie past the bleachers. I had a multiple book deal with Penguin Random House. I'd had a bestseller. I had another TV project in development. Midwives was in development for a movie. So by the time Oprah picked it, it was no longer quite the same rags to riches story that it would have been 4 or 5 years earlier.
Oh, see, I didn't realize a lot of that. My memory is a bit hazy. I interviewed a fellow named Charles Ardai last week on this show, and I was kind of equating his story with yours. He started a small publishing company called Hard Case Crime and was struggling along until Stephen King gave him a thumbs up, and that led to explosion. But either
Hmm.
way, either both post and pre-Oprah, Chris, you've published 25 novels, 30 languages. You've made movies, as I'm sorry, your books have been made into movies. You had that great HBO series, The Flight Attendant. You've been on plays. Um, the thing that I'm always impressed by is your versatility. Now, you're one of a handful of writers who get read an awful lot in this country. But to me, and again, this might be a misconception, the others are writing the same book over and over again. I love Jack Reacher. I have nothing against Lee Child, but when I pick up a Jack Reacher book, I know what I'm getting. When I pick up a Chris Bohjalian book, I don't know what country you're in, what continent you're going to be on, what century you're dealing with. Was that planned, Chris, from the beginning, or was that something that gradually came about as your career went on?
Well, not unlike you, I've been writing since the Mesozoic era. And, back in the 1990s, writers were less likely to be expected to remain in a lane. Oh, there'd been the classics like Agatha Christie, who were renowned for mysteries, but I don't think anyone looked at Margaret Atwood or Joyce Carol Oates or Saul Bellow or Toni Morrison or Philip Roth and said, you need to be writing historical fiction, or you need to be writing dystopian fiction. Writers pretty much wrote whatever interested them at that moment. So back in the day, I didn't have a grand plan that I was never going to write the same book twice. But by the time I was in my 40s, yeah, you're onto something, Jim. It had become kind of a goal. Always write what entertains me and what I hope will entertain my readers, but don't worry about necessarily being a literary fiction novelist or a mystery novelist or a romance novelist or a horror novelist. Just write whatever you are passionately interested in at the moment. So, yeah, I do jump around a lot, whether it's historical fiction or thrillers. Though here's where my work has changed. I'm going to say it was, I don't know, the mid 2010s, 2005, 2007, 2009. I realized I had fallen in love with so much streaming television or premium cable television at the time. The Sopranos, The Americans, Mad Men, Succession, Homeland. It's a really, really long list of TV shows I love. And all of those TV shows were about dread, not necessarily violence. Mad Men is not a violent show, but dread. And dread, whether I was writing historical fiction like Skeletons at the Feast in 2007 or thrillers and mysteries like The Double Bind, dread was my jam. And so I began to lean into it more. And so these days, whether I'm writing a book like The Flight Attendant, that I view as fundamentally a character study of two wildly damaged women, or a book like The Jackal's Mistress, which is unabashed historical fiction, dread is going to be a real big factor. And that's different from my earliest books, which were far slower burns.
Wow, that's really interesting. Now, dread is a word I never would have even equated with you, but now looking back at your last few works, it does make a lot of sense. You
Yeah.
mentioned Skeleton is at the Feast, and that's still my favorite. I like all of your books, but I probably told you
Thank you.
before, I like your historical fiction most of all, and
Oh,
that's my
thank you,
favorite.
man.
Although your current one, Jackal's Mistress, is also a favorite of mine. Let me jump back a while. You and I like to say, dug coal together. I either met you at a League of Vermont Writers meeting or when we were both doing a column for the Free Press. And one thing you might not remember that really impressed me, when the Burlington Free Press replaced my column with yours, you actually wrote to me or maybe called me, I don't remember, kind of asking if that was okay with me. I thought that was a really class act, Chris, because I had
Um,
nothing to do with all of it. But I thank you for this day. Go
thank,
ahead.
but I mean, the only thing I would suggest the only thing I would add to that is, um, I only replaced you because you wanted to focus more on your fiction writing and teaching. You are beloved. Your column was beloved in the Burlington Free Press. I loved it. My wife loved it. So when you decided to retire from it, there was no way I was going to take over it unless I had your seal of approval, unless I had the good housekeeping from Jim D. Filippi.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Chris. You're much too kind. Uh, let's talk about The Jackal's Mistress if we can. I think that's just out in paperback.
Yes.
It's historical fiction. What's it about?
Oh, thank you for asking. The Jackal's Mistress is a Civil War Romeo and Juliet based on a true story. It is the tale in my novel of Jonathan Weybridge, a captain in the Vermont Brigade who is left for dead in 1864 in the Shenandoah Valley when General Sheridan moves deeper into the valley. But he doesn't die. He is rescued by the wife of a Confederate soldier who makes the decision: if my husband were dying in Pennsylvania or Maryland, far from home, I would want a Yankee woman, coarse as she might be, to keep him alive and to care for him if he's dying. And so, despite the fact it was treasonous and dangerous as all get out, she brought him with two formerly enslaved people to her home, where she hid him in her bedroom while she and these two other adults continued to run her husband's grist mill, hiding him from John Mosby's Confederate Rangers, Jubal Early's Confederate soldiers, doing all that she could to keep him alive. And then, when she did manage to keep him alive, she needed to figure out, what am I going to do with him?
Yeah.
And she tried to bring him back across the rebel lines to the Union um, to the Union garrison in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. This was a true story. For my excuse me, true story. For my novel, it was perfect. It was the perfect jumping off point for a love story. In
Yeah.
reality, we have no idea if this Confederate woman and this Union soldier had a romance or whether they just remained friends, because they did become very, very good friends. We have no idea if this Confederate woman really could handle a Colt pistol, but she sure could in my novel.
Yeah.
And I just had
Well,
a great time researching it in the Shenandoah Valley, researching it in Harper's Ferry, researching it in places like the Museum of Civil War Medicine in Maryland, and of course, researching it where I am here in Middlebury, Vermont, because most of what we know about what actually happened was left behind by a Middlebury College graduate, the valedictorian from 1862,
I remember.
Aldous Walker, who recorded the story of Henry Bedell Jr., a not Jr., sorry, Henry Bedell, a soldier in the Vermont Brigade, and Betty Van Meter, the woman who saved his life, in a 6-page diversion from his book, The Vermont Brigade in the Shenandoah Valley, 1864.
Boy, your research, among other things, is just amazing. I think that what's put you head and shoulders above of the rest. And
No, there's
no,
so many great novelists out there doing amazing research, whether it's Vermont's own Stephen Kiernan or Fiona Davis or Dolan's Perkins Valdez. They're
yeah.
novelists who do great, great historical research.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we've had Steve Kiernan on this show, and I'm always anxious to read his newest things. Getting back to dread, the dread of the mistress of the Jackal's mistress is her dread of being discovered as a turncoat, or how does dread fit into that plot?
Great question. Yes, certainly there's the dread will Libby Stedman, that's the name of my
Yeah.
heroine in the novel, be discovered? Will Jonathan Weybridge, my wounded, dying captain, be discovered? If so, what will happen to them? What will happen to the two formerly enslaved people who are living on the property with Libby Stedman if it is found out that they have helped to protect an abolitionist? And of course, there is the 12-year-old girl on the premises. What will happen to her? Because she has already lost her mother. Her father is fighting somewhere down by Petersburg. She is the one who christens Jonathan Weybridge in the novel the Jackal. And of course, it is her aunt, Libby Stedman, who is the Jackal's mistress.
Do you feel it's imperative that you point out that dread to the reader, or are you just thinking to yourself, if I tell this story, the reader will understand the fear and the pressure these characters are under?
Yeah. There's that great Fitzgerald maxim, show, don't tell, and
Mhm.
the other maxim, action is character. So
Oh.
hopefully the dread is there in the same way that the clouds are there and the sky is there and the horses are there. You just feel it, see it, and experience it.
Yeah, oh, that's great. And so, yeah, you almost don't worry about that. That comes along as a byproduct of it, of it.
Yeah.
You're famous for your research, Chris. Well, you're famous for my my way of looking at things. When your intelligence. Let's go to your intelligence first,
Oh,
and then
thank
we'll
you.
get back to your research. You and
Overrated.
I,
My intelligence is so
no, no,
overrated.
you are. And I don't only mean in the books. I don't know if you remember, but you and I shared hamburgers at Libby's Blue Line Diner, probably back in the 1990s. And you were there, oh, saying different things about the publishing industry, which I never noticed or never realized. You also told me that the Expos were leaving Montreal. And I said, no, they're not. They're doing fine. And they left the next time. That amazes me. Uh, you're an intelligent guy. And which reminds me of something else. I know I'm babbling on now. Did you tell me once you were on a in the background of a baseball card? What am I
I
thinking?
am on the background of a baseball card.
Tell us
Yes,
that
it is.
story.
It is
That's
the
probably more
19.
important than you being a novelist.
Oh, it sure is. Oh my gosh. Yes. When I was a little boy, my father did the advertising for the Oakland Athletics, the Oakland A's. His ad agency in New York City did Charlie Finley and the whole era of Vida Blue and Reggie Jackson and Sal Bando and Rick Monday. And so whenever Charlie Finley didn't go to Yankee Stadium to watch the A's play the Yankees, he would give the visiting owner's box seats to the ad agency. So even though I'm a diehard Met fan, as a boy
Yeah.
I went to a lot of Yankee games. And one day when the Oakland A's were visiting the Yankees in April at the start of the season, they were still doing the final 100 baseball cards, that 550 to 650 series. And
Sure.
among them was Yankee player Kurt Blefrey. And
Not
I
too
am in the
many people remember
background.
Kurt.
I am in the background of the Kurt Blefrey baseball card, as is my father, my wonderful older brother Andy, and another executive from the ad agency.
Oh, that's great. So as you look back on your life, it was nice to write some novels. It was nice to be on Oprah, but that baseball card has to be the climbing achievement, huh?
Oh, it is. When you get to the top of the mountain in elementary school, man, the rest of life is just
Oh,
cake.
that's great. I want to
Everything's
get
anticlimactic when you've been on a baseball card, especially Kurt Blefrey, who is known not far and not wide.
I
It's not like being
vaguely
on the back of a
remember the
Tom Seaver
name.
baseball card.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And speaking of more about your research, weren't you actually immersed in water for one of your books? I forget the name of the book, but it was the pilot who landed the plane in the East River. And didn't you get yourself dunked to do some research on that? What's
I
that
did.
story?
I did. My 2011 novel is called The Night Strangers, and it's a ghost story about the pilot who is not Sully Sullenberger, who tries to ditch his regional jet in Lake Champlain the way Sully did and fails. The plane pinwheels, sinks, and while the pilot and a few passengers survive, most do not. So I wanted to understand, what is it like to be in a plane that ditches and is filling up fast with water. So I went to Survival Systems, which I believe is in Mystic or New London, Connecticut. And there with three, and I don't remember anymore whether they were National Guard aviators or naval aviators. I spent the day in the dunk tank. And many of your listeners and viewers will remember the dunk tank from the old movie An Officer and a Gentleman.
Yeah.
It has come so far. Instead of an egg that just, rolls into a big swimming pool, you have what looks like a minivan suspended above a massive swimming pool, and that minivan can be configured for up to 48 different fixed wing or rotary aircraft. You are dunked into this 100,000-gallon pool, and often it's turned upside down, as it was for my final time. You see, I was dunked four times that day. And the final time, because I wanted to know what the pilot is experiencing, they configured the pod for a regional jet, and they harnessed me in with a 5-point pilot's shoulder harness with a door behind me into a passenger cabin. They dunk it into the water, turn it 180 degrees upside down, and they gave me 28 seconds to get out of the 5-point shoulder harness, push the yoke ahead of me, open upside down the door into the passenger cabin, open the front passenger cabin door, and swim to the surface. It is the most fun I've ever had anywhere other than Essex Junction, Vermont's Champlain Valley Fair every year.
Oh my gosh, you sound like you're Penn and Teller or something like that. I hope they were ready, prepared to jump in and take that harness off you if you panicked and didn't do it.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes, first of all, no one has ever died in the dunk
Okay.
tank. Um,
Wow.
they've had injuries when they're doing Black Hawk helicopter evacuations, and they've got like 12 people in this pod trying to climb out if somebody panics. But no, here are the safety things that are in place. First of all, they had a scuba diver watching me underwater to
Good.
make sure that I'm doing this properly. Secondly, if the scuba diver can't get me out because I'm panicking so ferociously, they can lift the pod up instantly out of the water. The bottom falls out and the water drains instantly.
Boy, Houdini, that's who you are.
So I
Houdini.
was never in any danger, but it's a really fun experience.
Yeah, fun isn't one of the words I would use. I think it's also true for midwives. You actually experienced birth. You were born and you were taking notes as a newborn infant for that book. That's how far back you go.
I do go far back, but I don't want to, and I did interview like 65 different people from midwives, apprentices, moms and dads who had their babies at home,
Oh, that
OBGYNs, labor and delivery room nurses, pathologists.
Oh yeah, your
Um,
researching is amazing. As I say, I think there's a trident, a three-pointed spear of Chris Bohjalian's success. And one is you're obviously a talented guy, but I think your hard work and your inert knowledge enters into it too. I want to get back to what your newest book is working on because we only have 5 or so minutes left.
sure.
But let's get to the two talented ladies in your house, your wife and your daughter. Tell us a little about what's going on with those.
I often refer to myself as the third most talented artist in a family of three because
I'd
my wife
agree.
and daughter are both artists more talented than I am. My lovely bride is a fine art photographer whose career has evolved in ways that are just brilliant and magical. She's so talented. My daughter is a young actor. In fact, she is right now um, in a play called Zabel in Exile in Boston about the renowned Armenian intellectual from the early 20th century, Zabel Yesayan, who witnessed the run up to the Armenian genocide in Adana in 1908 and would die in one of Stalin's prisons under very mysterious circumstances 2 decades later, and then she's off to New York for Miracle on South Division Street. Yeah, so she's a very talented actor. But as it relates to your podcast, Jim, where Victoria Bluer and Grace Experience, my wife and daughter, figure into my work is this. My lovely bride has read every single word I've written before it was published. And that includes not just my books, but another 900,000 to 1 million words of journalism. So she has read at least 3.7 or 3.8 million of my words. My daughter Grace Experience is also a great audiobook narrator who has narrated all or parts of at least 7 or 8 of my books and has read, going back to the Sandcastle Girls in 2012, all of my novels and given me her critique as well before I've published them.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, getting back to what I say, they're making the rest of us look bad. My wife and kids have never read any of my books.
Oh, that's not true. Your wife and kids adore you and revere you, Jim. I know that.
Yeah, and everything kind of twirls in on itself. You've been honored for your part in making the Armenian genocide a more known segment of history than it has been. We don't have too much time left, but just give me a few words about how you're related to that and how Grace Experience. I think you said the play was based on that, or maybe it's a different genocide.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right,
There's too
Jim.
many
Um,
genocides to keep track of these days. Go ahead.
you're right. Um, one of the most quoted lines from my novel about the Armenian genocide, The Sandcastle Girls, is this: when the narrator says, there is a link between the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, the Cambodian killing fields, Rwanda, Darfur. It's a long list, but how much genocide can one sentence handle? Um, the Armenian genocide, in a nutshell, was this: between 1915 and 1923, though mostly in 1915 and 1916, the Ottoman Empire in the First World War on the brink of collapse systematically annihilated 3 out of every 4 Armenians living in the confines of the empire. 1.5 million Armenians plus 300,000 Assyrians and countless Greeks. Turkey and its sidekick Azerbaijan still do not acknowledge the Armenian genocide. It is only in the last few years that the United States has even begun to call the genocide a genocide, though, of course, the current administration, which is, if you can tell a lie, they will. If you can be savage, stupid, and corrupt, they will. The
Sounds
army, this,
domestic.
yes, this year the current American president does not refer to it as a genocide because of his relationship with strong men in Turkey and Azerbaijan. Even J.D. Vance, who visited Armenia this calendar year, visited the Armenian Genocide Memorial, tweeted out about visiting the Armenian Genocide Memorial, and then deleted it because, God forbid, this administration should call the genocide a genocide. So I wrote The Sandcastle Girls to educate my readers to this cataclysm that affected an entire nation of people. Um, that was the predecessor for the Holocaust.
Wow.
And it is one of the most important books I've ever written, The Sandcastle Girls.
Wow, that's terrific. I knew you were involved in that. I don't know if I've read the Sandcastle Girls. Let's end with a few. Well, before we talk about the Amateur, which is coming out next year, I want to at least give you a blurb on
Actually,
that.
August 2026.
Okay, so in a few months, actually. Before we do that, I want to do a quick Rorschach test. I'm going to hold up a book. You're going to give me one sentence or one thought about each of these books.
The Light of the Ruins, a Romeo and Juliet set in Tuscany in 1943 and 1944 that then moves to 1955 with a serial killer. The Red Lotus, published March 17th, 2020. Not great timing for a book in part about a race against time to prevent a worldwide pandemic.
Now I'm going to start embarrassing you, the older
Ah,
ones.
Past the Bleachers, the story of Bill and Harper Parrish, who are trying to conceive a son after their own little boy has died, and his decision to coach what would have been his own son's little league team.
And here's going way back, your second book.
Hangman, a ghost story set in New England, a ghost story that the world doesn't need.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I remember you saying, no, that was your second. What was your first novel, Chris? I
Oh,
remember
I
you,
wrote the single worst
yeah,
first
you
novel ever published, bar none, A Killing in the Real World.
That's right, A Killing in the Real World, which you hope to find and burn all the copies of. Let's end with this one, The Midwives. We don't even have to say anything about that. Chris, it's been just great. Tell us again the title of the new book that's coming out in August, and we'll bid adieu.
Jim, you're the best. Okay, The Amateur arrives August 4th. Imagine if one tragic accident completely changed your life. Secret affairs, predatory men, the class divide in America, and suddenly a teenager on trial. This is an important one. This book, I hope, is an event.
Oh, that's great. Chris, I can't tell you how much fun we've had. I've just been told by Zoom that they're going to start charging me if we go on any longer. So I'm
Jim,
out of
thanks,
here.
man. You're the best.
So are you, Chris. Thank you very much now. Bye. Say
Bye.
hello to the ladies.
And to your family.
Thank you.